Hey everyone, welcome to Star Wars Holocron, and to part 3 of our combat series. I hope you all are having a fantastic day today. Today, we're going to be going over the strong, medium, and fast styles, followed by a quick recap of all the forms and styles, ending with a brief summary of each form and style's strength and weaknesses. Also, just a heads up, not all the videos in here represent the corresponding lightsaber styles. Let's get started. By compromising quickness in favor of unmatched power, the strong technique relied on heavy blows to break through an adversary's defenses. The powerful approach was effective across long distances and was difficult to counter without matching strength. Because of its emphasis on strength and force, the strong method of lightsaber fighting is devastating in lightsaber duels and very effective against individual enemies using melee weapons. The forceful attack characteristics of this technique would make short work of lightsaber defenses. When a lightsaber lock did occur, the user generally won by tearing the lightsaber out of his opponent's hand, rendering him powerless. When used properly, this technique might deliver a deadly strike if its user were given the chance. Users of the strong technique, which relies on slow, powerful swings, they often let themselves susceptible to counterattacks and blast fire. Therefore, the approach may be at risk in close-quarter melee combat when compared to quicker adversaries. Its range and penetration power may more than make up for this. The position demanded frequent blade movement to protect the body, making it vulnerable to blast fire. This meant that lightsaber dueling became its primary use. A lightsaber raised high and back, prepared to unleash broad, forceful strokes, is a trademark of the strong technique. The strong form held an aggressive stance. Some, given the level of physical power needed, employed a one-handed version of this method to devastating effect. Since the position in the wind-up period for each swing stressed offense in the strong form, the practitioner was a convenient target. Only by blocking and then disarming the attacker, often with a quick twist of the blade, was it possible to defend against an oncoming attack with a lightsaber. This technique benefited greatly from the use of force speed because it was strong yet slow. There were similarities between this style and other aggressive ones linked to the Jedi Order, notably the power-based Gemso. It also shared characteristics with Juyo, which also neglected defense in favor of more potent offense. It also applied the sweeping motions of Chicho, also the pinpoint accuracy of Makashi. There was also an apparent influence on Ataru, namely the person's signature opening posture. The medium style was developed as a compromise between the extremes of strength and quickness, seen in the fast and strong techniques. A lightsaber duelist training often begins with the medium technique. The approach was basic, but it could be used as a starting point to develop further complex and forceful variations. The medium style's natural ease was both an advantage and disadvantage. It proved to be a good strategy to use as a last resort, since it offered solid offensive and defensive play. It was powerful enough to counter blasters and keep less experienced lightsaber combatants at bay. However, a more proficient marksman and lightsaber fighter would quickly breach a medium-style defense. In the exact same way, an expert fighter would quickly neutralize the user's forward motion and launch a devastating counterattack. Medium-style practitioners have a more relaxed posture, with the lightsaber held in an intermediate position in front of them, ready for either defense or attacking moves. The fast-style technique resembled the old Jedi Order's Chicho and Naiman styles, in that it too was a combination of several fighting styles, but was still basic. The lightsaber was moved in a series of short, swift movements that were able to be linked together practically always, allowing the practitioner to launch many assaults continuously. When paired with the force speed, its primary strength was in one-on-one fighting against slower enemies with weak defenses or a large number of enemies who did not have melee weapons. This particular type was the most effective at deflecting blaster bullets. It was an effective defensive maneuver in lightsaber fighting, allowing those using it to fortify their defenses versus several foes or just one powerful adversary. The benefits and drawbacks of the quick approach, which focuses on speed and repeated assaults, were equally apparent. The first problem was the fact that its emphasis on quick blows meant that the attackers could not put as much force into their attacks, which made them easier to parry or overwhelm. In addition, it had a very limited range, resulting in poor offensive tool versus a large group of enemies. Finally, if the utilizer's enemy was significantly stronger, the fast style's defenses would be promptly compromised. Because the blade is held so close to the body, a powerful and calculated adversary can easily wear down the practitioner by repeatedly hammering on the lightsaber. In order to quickly and effectively defend themselves from melee weapons and blasters, users of this technique held the blade close to their bodies, much like the Surisu form. Like Ataru, it relied on acrobatic leaps and flips to position itself to hit the enemy from unforeseen positions. In order to throw off an adversary's balance, practitioners of the fast technique might parry, pull, or shove at incredible speeds. So in review, Chicho represented the simplest type of lightsaber fighting recognized, which was employed over numerous enemies and focused on disarming an armed adversary rather than slaying or harming them. Padawans in the Jedi Order often practiced this style. Makashi was a lightsaber technique known for its elegance, poise, and choreographic precision. It was distinguished by its emphasis on dealing with an individual adversary, avoiding disarmament, and using swift, pinpoint attacks. Surisu was a method of defense characterized by slow, deliberate motion and careful efficiency of energy. This style's users did not become tired or make errors by focusing on only protection. They were dedicated to evaluating their adversaries and the opportunities produced by the aggression and tiredness of the enemy. Its popularity persisted even after other lightsaber designs emerged. Ataru was a lightsaber combat with an agile and combative tendency that prioritized the use of the Force to augment abilities throughout the fight and demanded enough space to strike from every vantage point. Because of the way it worked, it was viewed as a very taxing kind of combat, both physically and force-wise. Both Xian and Gemso lightsaber styles require swift shifts from committed protective positions to full-on assaults, making them physically demanding. The Xian style allowed for an inverted lightsaber grasp and prioritized blaster deflection. The Gemso style educated its practitioners in saber-on-saber and blaster deflection movements. The majority of Jedi practice Naiman for lightsaber fighting because it strikes a good balance between the advantages and disadvantages of the other styles. It required little physical exertion compared to preceding fighting methods, since the focus was on a delicate balance between both defense and offense while still making great use of the Force abilities. The Juyo fighting method has been the subject of the Jedi banning it before subsequently permitting only a select group of chosen individuals to utilize it, since it was seen as an especially violent and unpredictable technique. It evolved an approach that was taxing on one's mental state as much as one's body. The style emphasized ferocious attacks and a negative attitude that fueled constant aggression. Many Force users dropped the light side of the Force or came dangerously close to the dark side because of the frame of mind. Mace's variation of Form 7, Vapad, also depended on invoking strong emotions, such as rage and passion, but doing so involved control over them. This fighting method emphasizes fast, furious attacks and hard hits. It wasn't quite as careless as Juyo. All lightsaber forms, though, have their own strengths and weaknesses. Form 1 is great against multiple opponents due to its wide sweeping movements. However, because of its awkward blade work, a single opponent could easily move around a Chicho practitioner. Form 2 Makashi was very precise and effective against an opponent without utilizing a ton of energy. It was one of the best lightsaber forms for dueling purposes. Because it was solely focused on blade-to-blade combat, it was highly ineffective against blaster-wielding enemies, which left the practitioner vulnerable. Surisu was one of the best lightsaber forms for defense. They could literally walk out in a rainstorm and not get a drop of rain on them. Due to this, though, it did not have an offense, and prolonged battles could put the practitioner in serious danger, especially against a skilled lightsaber duelist. Form 4 Ataru utilized the Force to enhance speed, agility, and was a very aggressive form that was especially good against a single opponent. The form wasn't great against multiple opponents and blaster fire. Like all other weaknesses, though, this could be overcome by a skilled user. Like when we literally saw Yoda storm the Jedi Temple against the clones and not have a scratch on him. Form 5 Xian was great at stopping blaster fire and redirecting it back at the opponents. Essentially, it turns the opponent's weapon against them, but it wasn't created with the focus on fighting with a lightsaber. Gemso had powerful strikes and swift counterattacks. Plus, it kept a lot of Surisu's defensive techniques, meaning it was highly capable of protecting the user. Gemso, though, was extremely hard on the body due to the constant shift between switching from offense to defense, which could wear down the user. Gemso, although it was a physically demanding style, calling on the user to quickly transition from a dedicated defensive stance to an all-out attack. Nyman was straightforward and easy to learn, although it lacked an identity and was considered the jack of all trades. Plus, it took upwards of 10 years to master the form. Form 7 was the most aggressive of the forms, and it was chaotic and unpredictable. The user would strike at an opponent from different angles and at incredibly fast speeds. However, the utilizer had to draw on the anger and aggression during the fight, which resulted in bringing them awfully close to the dark side. Most Jedi who used Juyo fell to the dark side. Vapad, which had the strengths of Juyo, plus the added benefit of turning the user's own darkness against them, was even more apparent than Juyo. Vapad brought you extremely close to the dark side, to the point that you were actually dancing with it. The strong style had unmatched power, and the user would attack with devastating blows to crash through an enemy's defenses. It was extremely difficult to counter if one wasn't matched in strength. However, because the swings were so powerful, they were often slow to perform. This results in the user being vulnerable to counterattacks, blastifier, or quicker enemies. I would also imagine that this style would be less effective against multiple enemies at once. The medium style had the advantage of being a good counterbalance between the strong and fast forms. It was a good strategy to use as a last resort for offense and defense, though an experienced marksman or lightsaber duelist would easily blow through a medium style practitioner's defenses. Lastly, the fast style was excellent in one-on-one fights, especially against slower enemies, as it utilized both short and very swift movements that allowed the user to attack many times at once. It also had a huge advantage in deflecting blastifier. But because of its focus on quickness and extremely fast strikes, they were not able to put much force behind their attacks, leaving them vulnerable to counterattacks and parries. It also had a limited range, which resulted in it not being good at fighting multiple opponents at once. In the end, though, as I previously mentioned, a master of these forms and styles can overcome most, if not all, of the weaknesses associated with the former style. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please force push those like and subscribe buttons. May the force be with you, always.